And we're right on time. All right, let's go ahead and get started for the last session of the day, and actually the last session of the conference. And we had one other thing we wanted to do before we get to the panel, yeah?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Is it Eunice?
Yes, he's there.
Come on down.
Are you going to do it now? Chris is going to do it. So come on up.
Come on up.
Kristen.
Let's do it right out of the gate.
So the order to be handed out awards at lunchtime,
Yes.
and there were 2 awards that got missed.
Well, actually, we still have 4 awards.
4 awards. So come hand them out real quick. Fast.
So we did awards for the highest attended session and also the most yays session. So our highest attended session of the conference outside of the lightning talks and the panels was Mario Romano for his unified API. Oh, there he is. Yeah. And then we have, oddly enough, we had a tie for the most yays in any session. So those are going to our returning champion, Michael Suzuki. Oh, you're on stage now. And our Queen Bee, Oksana Kursheva. I'll let you give out the last one.
And the last one, well, it's for the person who wanted the most to be awarded by the Order of the Bee. No, seriously. It's for you, John, for all the great work you've been doing all these years. All right. Here you are.
I think they call that one the Lifetime Achievement Award, John. That's what it is. All right. Well, hey, we're planning to stay here and answer questions for at least the next 45 minutes, but you know how this goes. We're always available for input and feedback, and hopefully you've gotten that sense throughout. But before we jump into the Q&A, and so thank you for your questions, I also want to do a little bit more recognition, and that's for the team that actually helped really drive and put on this event. So first of all, folks from Order to Be who were very involved in helping do our selection for papers and structuring, and very, very nicely passing off the baton back to Alfresco to hold this event this year, so a round of applause for all of you. Of course, I'd like to thank our sponsors for helping us fund the event and bringing all their great opportunities. You saw them up in the break area all during the event, so thank you to sponsors as well. And there are 3 individuals in particular that put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on the Alfresco side to pulling this off. You know who they are. Some of them have been behind the scenes. Some of them have been very much in front. So that, of course, is Richard Esplin, Francesco, and Kristen Gastaldo. So please, a round of applause. I guarantee you, without their efforts, this wouldn't have come off as well and as smoothly as it did. So thanks again. All right, now I have my illustrious panel up here. I think we've got enough chairs. And thank you for your questions. We're going to go through and address them in order and answer them as best we can. And again, if we don't get your question answered because we run out of time, please follow up. You know where to find us. So let's hit the first one, and then you guys can arm wrestle or whatever you want to do to figure out who answers it. The first question you have is, in your cloud vision, and we talked about cloud a lot this week, how can we outscale Alfresco nodes in peak moments without having separate Alfresco licenses for all the nodes needed for the peak moment? John, you want to take that?
On behalf of the executive team, I guess I'll answer this question. You know, as more and more new customers come on board and their AWS, this is a question that gets asked a lot. And what I can say is we're working on it. I'd love to give you an answer, but in the short term, if it is a big deal, you know, if you have like peak periods, but you know, it doesn't last for the entire year, or you know, maybe it's just Christmas time or peak trading periods, just have a conversation with your sales executive and we'll work it out. You know, we have negotiated you know, special terms for those people where peak periods is a big deal. We will come up with a more standardized answer than that, but we'll be reasonable about it.
So yeah, we're looking at an entitlement model to be able to allow this. I'm part of the group that's putting together this model, so send a note to me. Paul Hampton is my counterpart on the marketing side that is also working on this entitlement model. All of our emails are first name dot last name, so send us a note if you have a specific use case.
Yeah, great. Next question, and this is for those of you that saw the hackathon readout. This is a really good question to ask. When will the Office 365 integration be released? Another product question.
It's not currently, we don't currently have a date on the roadmap, so it's another one of those, we hear you, we don't have it fully scoped to the point where I can give you a firm date, but we're obviously working on it, so that's the quick answer. But there's also partners that do things, and there's other ways to, what I like to say, skin the cat. Sometimes people do things at the protocol level, they do things at other integration points using WebDAV and other things, so it kind of depends on what problem you're trying to solve. But specifically Office 365, we don't have it.
And if you're interested in Office 365, you should email Preeti Nirwal, who had a head back last night, but she'd very much like to know the details of your use case. There's different ways to integrate with Office 365 depending on which functionality you're interested in, and so we want to know that.
Her email address was on that slide I kicked off the event with, of what are these early access programs.
Great, next question is, will there be held a specialized DevCon or event for ADF development and in-depth issues, discussions, best practices exchange in the near future? I'll answer that in part as the marketing representative on stage. We don't currently have a separate event planned for DevCon. Obviously, we were talking about, for ADF. We've been talking about it at DevCon all during this week, but there are a number of different ways you get involved in discussions around ADF. And Richard, maybe you want to say a word or two about what we've been doing in office hours in that regard. And then we've also had meetups in many different locations as part of our community activity.
I'm actually going to pass to Oli since he's been doing
okay. Didn't see him down at the end. Bravo.
So I definitely think it's an interesting idea, and it's something that's been coming up a lot, that we need better enablement, we need more enablement, and we want to have more group discussions around ADF. Lots of people are trying to figure this out. A lot of you have already picked it up. So what I'd say is, it's not something we're currently planning. It's definitely something I'd consider. We have been talking about how can we do more mass-to-mass communication, because we have a lot of one-on-one conversations. So I meet regularly with partners, with customers, with community members, and talk through their use cases and figure out, give them the right guidance and everything. We have improved on our training. So at Alfresco University, we've just released 3 or 4 courses that takes you through some of the basics of ADF. So if you're looking to get started, that's a great place to go. We also have lots of things around office hours and TikTok Live where we could do more, but we need inputs on content. I've gotten 5 different blog posts or /videos/sessions we could do on, let's go and build out this use case. So that's something we could look into how we could do it. It's always a challenge because I need to rely on the engineering team, Mary and Eugenio and Dennis and all the guys in the ADF team. So whenever I pull them out to do stuff like this, that's engineering effort. I won't get ADF issues resolved. So it's a trade-off. We have to figure out how much we draw on it. But definitely something I'm interested in learning more about, and then we can figure out. I probably wouldn't say it's going to be like a big event. We could do something online. There's lots of ways we could solve this without having to go and spend a lot of money on it. But do send me an email if you have any ideas, if this is something you're interested in. Go hit me up, talk to me afterwards, send me an email. More than happy to have that conversation.
Perfect. Okay, another question. This is in part an architectural one, maybe Brian for you. For the hybrid ECM proposition, is there a way to have a private cloud sync for government specifically, so the data is kept national? I think it's a data sovereignty question in part.
Okay, so at the moment, the cloud sync is to our cloud offering, so myalfresco.com, that's hosted in US East. At the moment, we don't have any plans to enable you to have your own private cloud sync. However, we are interested in hearing what those use cases are. So if there are government use cases out there that require that, maybe there are other ways of achieving the same kind of thing that we can talk about. But again, talk to us about what it is you actually want to achieve and why you want to achieve it. We can work with you to find out whether there's a way with the current product or whether there's something that we should be planning for.
Or we can point you to a partner that may have a connector that does it. Or we can point you to a partner that may have a connector that does it.
From a product perspective, this is something that Thomas asked me to research quite a bit. You'll see in Brian's stepping stones that there's some steps to be able to have a more scalable on-premise cloud sync. We need better queuing, we need better ordering, all these different steps that are in Brian's stepping stones. But if you have specific use cases, please do contact me. I've got a list of partners I'm directing people to in the interim, and I'm trying to put together the requirements for when we have the building blocks in place architecturally, we can tackle this.
Awesome. Next question is, where's the next DevCon going to be held? So first of all, you think we should do this again? I'm not surprised. We're working on that right now. So what I can tell you at this point is that we are planning to do it again probably around the same time next year. Location still TBD. We've got a few different options on the table. If you do have suggestions of locations that you think would be great, obviously there's a little bit of, we didn't have that Larry Ellison pile of cash, for those of you who are just seeing this the last session, to do something like a Tahiti. But if you have a good reasonable suggestion, please send it my way. And like Thomas said, first name, last name at alfresco.com. Love to hear your thoughts on that as we plan for next year. Okay, here's another good one. Mauricio told me that a pull request is awarded with an incredible, fashionable t-shirt. Are you planning something similar for ACS?
Can I clarify?
Well, I can say out of the gate that I've learned a lot with the way Mauricio works with his team, and I intend to adopt a lot of his practices as much as I can.
So yeah, so it's not sending the pull request. The pull request needs to be merged, and needs to be approved, and needs to be released. So if you hold until all that process, you might get a T-shirt. You might get T-shirt, and it might be fashionable, but that's that's under discussion. So. It's definitely a good idea.
So, Kristen, you've got budget for me to do that, right?
And
Just to remind to everyone, because I've been stopped a couple of times. Do you see this wonderful shirt? You can have it if you release a video showing a tutorial for the community. You have this shirt, and it's amazing. So let's take this opportunity. Short videos, yes, okay. It's another opportunity. Okay, just to say that.
Angel did one, and
Angel, can you show it? Okay.
And as you can see from our male model down here, it's very fashionable as well. So.
Thank you, Chris.
if it's good enough for an Italian, it's good enough for me.
Oh boy, we've got the hats, we got the shirt. Yeah. Good. So I don't know if this is really a Richard question, but it is directed at him. So you, Richard Esplin, mentioned that share will eventually be deprecated. What would possibly be the out-of-the-box, ready-to-go replacement for share? And I think we talked about this quite a bit already. But
And I just want to clarify that I am not the share product manager. I just discuss share when people ask me questions. So I'm going to pass to the guy that runs the team.
Yeah, you can run it to me. So John Knowles has been doing the front end, kind of what we call clients, right, which includes mobile as well. And Share, as we all know, has been around for a long time. It was built as an app. It started to get turned into everything, a Swiss Army knife, right? It does everything. It was an app, it was a platform, it was everything. It was primarily focused on collaboration because that was the original vision, was a SharePoint alternative. But yeah, it has some features in there that are only in Share. If you have a collaboration use case, still use Share. The challenge is all the customization starts to become challenged after a while, which is why we've been investing in APIs heavily over the last several releases, and have also developed in a framework because we're in the platform business, not necessarily in the app business to have a number of different apps. They're not on the price list. It's not something that we sell. But we have a framework, and we have a framework that has more and more components, and we are keeping these guys busy building more and more components, and we'd like to get to the day when we have enough components where you can start to do collaboration and other type of things that are beyond what Share can even do today. We're just not there yet. So is there another Share? Are we going to do, I get this question all the time, and I want to say it for the record, are we going to build an ADF-based Share? And the answer is no. That's because Share was a very specific thing. We're going to have a number of different ADF components that you could construct applications. One may look and smell like Share, but it ain't Share because Share was the thing. But we need to get a critical mass of components to address these use cases, and that's the journey that we're on. So there's no direct Share replacement in ADF on the roadmap because, again, that was a point in time that did a certain thing. We need to build a number of different components of which you can build a multitude of apps. One of them may be collaboration-like. So I get this question every few months. It's the same answer, but that's it is.
And it's worth pointing out we have 2 example apps today.
And we already have 2 example apps today to help you along that journey, which does address the, well, can you show me something out of the box? Yeah, it would be an ADF. It would either A, continue to show Share, or B, it's these starter apps that we're starting to be able to publish now too. And as soon as the team starts to build more components, we'll make those richer and do more things.
I think I'll say a similar thing in a slightly different way. We have chosen to be a platform company. So what a platform company really wants other people to take the platform and deliver amazing value on it. And we are not the best experts on collaboration applications. We think you are, or somebody out there could do a fantastic job with the ADF, with the platform. We want to be a platform company. We're not going to build the best collaboration app. And that's our strategy. So sort of saying that in a different way, we'd love someone else to do that and build it on the platform.
Great, and at the same time, I think, Thomas, as you mentioned, no accident that John Knowles is also the product manager for one of those applications that's just released, right? Yeah, great. Here's an interesting question. We could interpret this many different ways. How much time does it take you to train a junior developer on Alfresco? And I think there's probably maybe, Mark, an engineering answer, and then there's maybe a developer answer. So, Mark, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so I read that question, and I assumed, I run engineering. With my bias, I assumed that meant, how long does it take for us to train a graduate engineer to work on Alfresco? Then I spoke to someone else, and they thought it may mean something different. But I'll answer my interpretation first, and that is, we take a graduate engineer. We have a fantastic program with the EU to get interns in, which worked really well from us. We get interns from all over the EU, and as soon as they become, even when they're interns, when they become employees, they're working on our products straight away. So we've over the last few years really enhanced our intern program. We take people who aren't interns as well, and when engineers join Alfresco, they will join a team. They won't be sent on a training program. They'll join a team and they'll start picking up responsibilities. However, I think the question, when I read it for the 3rd time, I think it meant how long to be productive building software on top of the Alfresco platform. So one of the standard engineering answers is often it depends who it is and what you're making. Hopefully you've seen some demos here of rapid value, but maybe I'll pass to Mario to get your kind of benchmark on the sort of skills and the sort of speed to make value.
So I think it's important to underline what Mark said. We have a training program. So when people join Alfresco, usually go through this training program, so they get to know what is Alfresco, all the technologies that we are using. Of course, there is also the training on job, so they sit together with other people that have more seniority inside the company, and they peer programming with them, and they have a way with them to understand exactly the way that what are the good practices that we use inside our company. We also don't take just interns. We also get people from the community. So it could even be the case that someone that joins Alfresco already knows exactly what is the product, and maybe he already had a chance in the past to work in the product, in the process, on the content.
May I add something about, so a little bit, a small comment about the activity community. Part of what we are doing in order to reduce the initial overhead of learning our tools and our services and our libraries is to try to collaborate with some other open source communities and follow their same patterns. The Spring community is huge. The Spring Cloud community is huge as well in the sense that they are creating very, very complex software, but we are trying to follow the same approach and following the same guidelines. So when you need to learn the stuff that we are building, if you already know a Spring, it should feel natural. Part of the main goal of Activity 7 is to make sure that when you want to use it, you don't need to spend huge amounts of time of learning about the decisions that we made. You will just continue with the things that you already know for some other popular communities.
So I'm just going to add a little more to Mark's interpretation of the question. I've read it a few times now as well. I think you're right. So in my previous role, we hired lots of engineers, and I was responsible for making sure that they became productive as quickly as possible. So I'll try and quantify this. So we have an onboarding program inside the engineering team, and the goal of that is to get these engineers committing code as quickly as possible. So getting code committed is kind of a measure of success, and we aim to get people committing code in the team that they're in within 3 weeks of joining Alfresco. So that's down to 1 week now. See, that I've been out of the role for a year, and we divided by 3 in a year, which is pretty good. So within a week, they're committing code, and obviously these are small commits, but that's the way to get the engineers productive quickly with the code base.
And I'd also just like to take this opportunity to put a plug in for Alfresco University and our training partners too. So if you don't have an internal engineering training program like we do, that's a great source to get people up to speed quickly. Let's see, next question is actually about share, so it's sort of been asked and answered. Here's a good one. Regarding the new Insight module for search, reporting, and analytics, will it be available for community enterprise or as a module requiring extra license? So it's sort of a licensing question combined with how we're going to package.
So certainly a lot of the hooks are there that are part of community because it's all there in open core, right? The module that we're starting to productize would be a module that would be a for-pay module. That's what Harry was showing some of that earlier. We haven't nailed down 100% pricing on it yet, but the idea is there, again, anybody could develop something also based on those hooks. We have something that's ready to go out of the box, but that would be a for-pay thing.
Yeah. Here's another one about the structure of this event. So why did Alfresco decide to take over the DevCon this year? I'll speak to that. And to even offer free entry to everybody, what changed from previous years? It was Boris out there. We didn't decide to take over. It was not a hostile takeover. In fact, great. You want to speak to how that all went down?
Yes. So this wasn't a takeover. No, Francesco and Kristen, they asked us whether we would like to be free of all the burden of organizing the conference and then take more like the content part of it and the fun of it. And we say, yes, this is a good idea. And I also explained it yesterday when we were saying like there are things that you have to do and those things that you want to do. Organizing the conference was something that we wanted to do at the moment, and that was what we had to do. And then after 2 successful events, and Alfresco wanted to be part of it more like from the organizing part. We said, okay, now this is the part that we don't want to do anymore, so you can do it, and we can continue contributing with you and work together. So we really feel welcome in all these organizations. So it's not a takeover. I think it's. But you can answer the part of the ways it's free of charge and all this stuff.
It's a partnership. It's worked really well.
And if when I kicked it off yesterday morning, one of the slides I had was session content, kind of divided by topic, but also divided by whether it's an Alfresco employee or not. And you could see on that slide, and specifically why I put it there is because it was about 50-50, by minutes and by session. So yeah, this was not the takeover. This was a how do we collaboratively work together.
Can you address the and made it free?
Yeah. So two-part question. Second half of the question, the free piece, it's an investment in you. Right, and we decided this year, in part because the baton had been passed, that we want to bring that back and open it up and make sure people could attend and get the groundswell that we expected but weren't sure about happening right out of the gate. I will say that next year in Tahiti, it may not be free, right? But this year, we definitely wanted to make that investment in you, and hopefully you appreciate that. So.
Chris, can I just add, from a technical perspective, as I said before, we are a platform company. A platform company has to have a development conference. That's just part of, if this is what we want to be, and we do, I think, I don't know as much as many of you maybe about the history of Alfresco, but, it's thought before about solutions and different forms of monetization. We've decided in the 2 years that I've been here, we want to be a platform company, so we absolutely have to have a developer conference.
Yeah, and I just add to that from a product marketing perspective. My experience just in the industry is, the brain trust up here can define a platform as whatever they want. A platform is actually defined by its developers, by you guys, right? And that's in part why we want so much feedback. Are there plans for Alfresco-supported dependencies to more closely track upstream versions of Java, Tomcat, Solr, etc.?
Yes. I try and answer questions simply, and the answer is yes. Okay, so we always try and track. So in fact, before we do a release, in fact quite a bit before we do a release, we look out there and we have a process internally of looking at what versions of what things are coming along and are likely to be within the time period of the next release, and then we plan the work to upgrade or test on those new versions of those new things. There's another one about new versions of Spring and libraries, and in fact Richard can talk to that one, but at the moment the repository team, the content services team, have a chunk of work allocated to them to do precisely that. So yeah, there's a lot of work. We use a lot of open source libraries in our code, especially on the content services especially, and I think on the process services too. It's not free, it impacts on other things if we choose to do that, so we're careful about it, but yeah, we do keep up to date, and I'll pass over to Richard to fill in any gaps.
Specifically in the roadmap for our Alfresco Content Services 6.0 release is to upgrade to Spring 4. We're evaluating whether we can go to 5, but we're a little nervous. It's too big a jump for one release. But we're also upgrading not Hibernate. Hazelcast at the same time. Thank you, Bindu, for reminding me what I told you. No, it's very good. We made some significant process changes over the past year as part of that move from Subversion to Git, and part of the automated testing process that involves a reorganization to have people with dedicated responsibility to track these libraries and figure out how to bring them in and how to test them appropriately. And as we move to Git, we're tracking a lot of these libraries separately, so our patch set is in GitHub and is easy to follow the upstream and reapply our patches if they're not accepted upstream. So we expect that the workload to maintain these current going forward is lower than it's been in the past. Like Brian said, we always have to be careful about how we measure that against new feature development, but a lot of that investment this year that impacted other things like community edition releases was to refine this process of tracking upstream libraries and keeping them current.
Okay, so in Activity 7, of course, we are doing things a little bit different because we had the opportunity to do that. And basically what we are doing, instead of targeting, so for the development branch, which is the unstable branch, we are collaborating with other communities. And because we are doing changes in other communities, we are relying on their snapshots. And we do that not because we like to rely on snapshots, but we need to make sure that when they release, all the things that we will need are already fixed. And when we will release on top of their stable version, that we know that it works. So basically, we are aligning our release trains with another frameworks, in this case, the most popular ones, the most that we rely the most on those. And for us, until now, it's working great because, again, we had the chance to test things before other communities release their stuff, so we can collaborate and we can increase that collaboration. It's much easier to, communities in general, are they more willing to merge pull requests when they are still about to release and in the last milestones, than after they've released and they need to make bigger changes. And because we are heavily using some of these libraries, we need to make sure that those libraries, when they are released, they work. And it also gives us the other advantage that as soon as they have a final release, a GA release, we can go ahead and release our GA release on top of that. And we know that that combination will work. At the moment that we release, then we switch back to snapshots and we keep working on snapshots and collaborating with other communities.
Just something else in the context of this. So, as I mentioned, we use a lot of open source libraries. We also have a tool called White Source, which we use to monitor security vulnerabilities that have been discovered in those libraries. So if that tool reports to us that a particular library that we use does have a security vulnerability, then that floats right up to the top of our priority list. And nothing is more important than fixing those security vulnerabilities and doing analysis on how that could be exposed through our product.
And that's not a solicitation for new hacks. You're just saying that's how we do it, right? Okay, good. Very specific question. And actually, this is an interesting one, given some of the conversations that AWS has brought up this week. Any tool to validate backup for content store and database, taking into consideration the integrity? I'm guessing referential integrity, so when you do a restore. Any plans for that? Or is that an awesome opportunity for somebody out there?
There's a community project which has done some of that. I'm trying to remember who built it. Bart? Yes. Well, Tony built Bart, but then there was somebody else who added the after check, or they're working on it. The point being is, this is a great place for add-ons. We have evaluated doing this. It's something we'd like to do. We're currently focused on containerization and library upgrades and some of the roadmap stepping stones that Brian laid out. But a lot of these administrative tools are things we'd like to get done. It's just a question of how it floats in the list. And we know that our consulting, our consulting team, as well as add-ons like BART can fill some of that gap.
Well, as I show during my talk, it depends on, so there is not a tool for everything. So it depends on your architecture. And it will depend also the requirement, because you don't have a point-in-time backup of everything, because you have, if you have a cluster environment, you have a database in one place, you have your content store in another place, and an index or multiple index servers in many different places. So you don't have an exactly point-in-time recovery. Not very accurate, but maybe kind of accurate. So I guess it's different solutions for different kind of implementation. So it depends. So with BART, you can do it for small and medium size deployments, but not for a big one like the one I showed during my presentation with multiple shards for 500 million documents. No, it's different. It's different.
Great. Another good question. I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't. How many Alfresco certified people are there? Is there anybody from Alfresco University? You guys would probably know, right?
I just happen to be here. We have around 250 people certified among all the 4 certifications that are currently available.
So that's all 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Between all 4.
probably a broader spectrum of maybe folks that are just 1 or 2 or something like that.
The one that has the most people certified is the engineers for Alfresco Content Services.
Excellent. and hopefully many more soon.
Exactly.
Wow, you guys must like DevCon. Any plans for a DevCon in the Americas? Would that be of interest? Just show of hands? Yeah? Yeah. Shocking, all the Americans. Okay. Yeah, it's...
By show of hands,
Oh, it's a good one.
raise them up. Who wants North America?
Representing North America, there's a bunch of folks on the other side that'd love to be here.
Yeah, okay. Well, and actually let me ask it one other way, too, is since we're still working through this, if we did alternate year over year, one to the other, how many Europeans would go to the Americas to do a DevCon?
So everybody that put your hands up, put them back up.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to go to the U.S., put them down.
Okay. That's good feedback. That's a good data point. Thank you. So the answer specifically, since it was asked, is that's one of the factors we're looking at. We're thinking through what's the right strategy to make that happen. I think I have gotten some comments from a variety of people this week, though. That's really nice to actually have a global audience all in one place. So just yet another data point.
How about Haiti?
So, is there, again, another conference question. Is there any other conference planned this year where I can find Alfresco engineers? Do you guys hide all day? Because I think you're pretty easy to find. You guys want to address that? Like, there's not a specific conference that we're holding, but I know a lot of folks on this team do attend industry conferences and the like, and certainly are pretty available. So.
Yeah, we go also to other conferences. We don't go only to our Alfresco conferences. Me, Maurizio, about other guys of the team. We attend to, for example, last year we have been to CodeMotion, to the Java Barcelona conference. What other conference? Yeah. Sometimes we also go there as just attendee, so just to attend to the talks of other people.
Like on the other side of that, we'd actually like to know what other conferences that you guys go to. So we'd actually like to know what. In like 2 weeks, right? You want to date a slide? Yeah. Yeah, so if you guys, I'm in the community, if you want to post anything, letting us know what conferences you'll be attending, we want to consider where people that are interested in our software, where else you are, where we should submit papers to. So it's just to get insight for where we should be as well.
Yeah, great point, Kristen. Here's a meaty one. Evolution to a microservices infrastructure for ACS and APS will bring differences between Alfresco Community and Enterprise version more than now. That's a statement in the form of a question, I guess. So will there be more differences as we move down that path?
So I grabbed it before Brian because there's a specific product question there around how we do our differentiation. And as I mentioned earlier, whenever I mentioned it, that yesterday afternoon about this time, we recognize that our model's going to need to change, but I wouldn't say we're shooting for more differentiation, but we probably need different differentiation. And so that's a research task. We recognize a lot of people are using Community Edition in their businesses, and we want to understand how we can differentiate in a way that works well in a microservices, Kubernetes, containerized, cloud-ready architecture that plays nicely with APS and activity, and how we can still preserve that underlying incentive to buy our services that the larger organizations and our larger partners depend on. So I'll let Brian answer.
Okay, so in fact, this is a very good question. I'm not sure who are. Max. I don't know who Max is, but good question. In fact, I wrote a paper on this, internal paper, about how we build our enterprise products based on our community products. So I coined the term technical surface to incorporate things like APIs. When we have events, there'll be events, but also how we configure it, how you administer it. Basically, where the touch points are on the platform that you all interact with. And it's important that as we build out the new community editions, that we keep in mind that the surface of the Enterprise Edition incorporates the technical surface of the Community Edition. So no, the summary of the answer to this question is no, there's not a sort of a divergent path between what is community and what is enterprise from an architectural point of view. As the Enterprise Edition, in fact, it actually goes the other way. As the Community Edition, and if you've been to the Activity 7 talks, you'll know that the Community Edition on the process side is already starting to implement the architecture that I talked about early yesterday. As that works and evolves towards the vision that I described, then the Enterprise Edition will follow suit. And effectively, the Community Edition is pulling us in the direction of that the Enterprise Edition needs to take as well. So in summary, no, this won't be a divergent path between community and enterprise from an architectural perspective.
Terrific. I want to make sure, we're getting pretty far down in the queue. I want to make sure we reserve some time for in-room questions too. So are there questions in the room that we want to go to? Yes. Is that yours? Yeah.
No, it's not my question, but that's what I would, yeah.
Okay.
So basically, it's been announced that Alfresco in the cloud will soon be abandoned. Is there going to be a replacement? And if there's not, what's going to happen with the hybrid ECM story?
So we haven't really formally talked about abandoning anything at this point right now, and it serves a specific use case. That's what it does. There's no formal published plans to abandon anything, so I think it's a kind of a premature question. Yeah, so.
It's probably specifically referring to the email we sent out talking about future plans for ACS 6.0, where we listed a variety of features that are evolving or are receiving reduced investment or are officially deprecated. And my.alfresco.com is on the list of features that we're continuing to maintain for the existing customers, but we're not expanding that use case. As I mentioned when we talked about synchronization for governance purposes on premise, there's certain architectural changes that Brian's talked about that we want to get into the product so we can build these future use cases. But we haven't established a timeline for when the existing product would end of life because we're still working on building those replacements and deciding which use cases make the most sense for our customers.
Yeah, we have obligations that we can't back out of, so until we have a viable way to fulfill those obligations, it continues, is kind of the quick answer.
Suffice it to say, we're finding a way to support the use case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually, I'm really looking forward to the hybrid vision developing, so I'm not so much worried about my Alfresco going away, but I want to actually see more ability to build collaborative use cases with content services in the cloud and on-prem being able to collaborate with each other.
So let me give a plug for the latest S3 connector we just GA'd last week that has support. So we sell an S3 connector. It works with enterprise. It supports Amazon infrequent access and on-prem Alfresco to S3 cloud storage, which is kind of like a new definition of what hybrid could be about, hey, if you want to do cloud backup in S3 or some other kind of backup redundancy or just kind of get scalability because, again, seasonal conditions, I can kind of flex to the cloud, so to speak. That's a new feature. Is it the exact use case? No, it's a totally different animal. But when you get to expanding hybrid use cases, that's actually one that we've gone, actually, technically it is because it's on-prem and cloud, but it's not hybrid as we know it. But that, if you guys want to get information, it's all in the docs.alfresco.com, how to set that up and how to use it. But yeah, so that's one expansion of hybrid, but it's just a very different animal.
Cool. So we're right at the top of the hour, and for the questions that we didn't get to, we will go ahead and answer those and put the answers in the community. We can capture that. So for those of you that like have this burning question, but I'd like to close and see if we've got one more from the crowd here. And since it's the last question, if you're going to ask it, make it a really good one.
No pressure.
No pressure. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Last question. And then you can leave a token on your way out the door if this is a yay or a meh question. So.
Right. I'm going to change my question then. Would you consider next year all the delegates wearing a kilt and having DevCon in Edinburgh in Scotland?
It's funny you should ask that. I don't know if we signed up for the kilt thing yet or not, but that is actually one of the potential cities that we're looking at, given the factors I talked about before. What's that? Yeah. Yeah, if you're...
Is somebody going to teach us proper kilt etiquette?
Yeah, it's next year. It'll be the Alfresco Scottish Games taking place. No. Okay. Well, I would like to close by thanking everybody. Thank you to our panel. Certainly, thank you to our community and every one of you that's hopefully going to be more and more a part of that over time. Thank you again to Kristen, Francesco, Richard for what they've done. You can clap for yourself, that's okay. And stay tuned for more information about next year's DevCon. Hopefully, you found over the past week you've been able to build more and better relationships, either with the Alfresco team or with your peers while you've been here, that you've gained insight into what we're doing. And I don't just mean listening to Harry's talk 3 times when you go back. I think, Kristen, the intent is to take this content and have it available, yeah?
We'll have all the slides, all the recordings from all of the sessions, except maybe John Newton's. I'm not sure I can put those slides online. So everything else I'll have up probably by the end of next week, and that will be in SlideShare and on our YouTube page.
And most of all, I hope that this has been a great week for discovery here in Lisbon. So thank you all for coming very much.